Ladies and gentlemen, Digital Dissection. Hello, Joe. How are you this evening?
Oh, sorry. Slightly taken aback by that. I assumed that there'd be more of a grandiose introduction for a third season.
I was actually going for like the John Edward TV show. What was it? Crossing Over or something? What was it called?
Yeah. Crossing Over. Yep.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, John Edward. And then he'd come out with this little like Canadian tuxedo or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude. Season 3.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How the hell you doing, man?
I mean, I don't know how we're still doing it. Like 3 seasons. Wow. 94 episodes of mainline content so far. Gonna reach that big 100, the 3 digits, any day now.
Dear God. It's coming. It's going to be here soon.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I think that makes us officially podcast old. Like,
is that what that is? We're
I think
podcast
so.
old?
We still think of like the like 30 episodes ago as like, you know, our first episode. We were just that old at this point. Oh, we were just getting going 30 episodes ago. Oh no, no, we weren't.
Yeah, we really find our footing in the 87th episode. Yeah, we really do.
There we go, and that's the first Ghostbusters joke of the third season.
And that's the funny thing. That's the first thing I thought about was when we hit that record button for Ghostbusters, and like I was totally ready with the facts and the knowledge and like the over 25 plus years of listening to that or watching that movie. And then I was like, wow, I sound like I am scared. It's probably because I was scared as shit. I don't know about you.
I mean, like those shakes continued like through. I mean, even like season 2, where you got to talk to Kyle Bear. I was definitely scared that entire time. Didn't know what to say.
Seriously, you're like a deer caught in the trail cam. You know?
Yeah, we even have like a rough like script and outline of things to stick to. Yeah, didn't help. Still scared.
Oh man, yeah. And you know what? What I love about this show is that it has evolved throughout the last couple of years, where we started off wanting to be like in this like neo retro area, which we were kind of uncoordinated with at first. We were bouncing around and, you know, going from topic to topic, sometimes like 3 movies in a row. And then in season 2, we kind of went, no, let's structure this a little bit more.
Yes.
Let's give people something to actually follow. And so we've kept that though. We're keeping that going into season 3.
We are. Of the format changes that you will encounter this season, our rough episode structure, not one of them. It seems to be a good formula.
No, absolutely not. We even though we do have seats in our pants, we do not fly by them. We've chosen not to.
No. And speaking of some structure being maintained from season to season, what season would it be if we discuss Nicolas Cage and all of his works that he's done? Because that brings us to where we are tonight with one of his better ones, to be honest. And then, like the plethora of Nick Cage, this is one of the better ones in like terms of, I don't know, everything, like writing, acting, like fun, and dare I say believability of the movie. Like this just kind of has it all.
It has believability, okay? It's good. Yeah, the 2004's National Treasure is one of those guilty pleasure movies for I think a lot of people, not just us. But it is one of those movies that I'm surprised we didn't cover in the first 90-ish episodes. Even though we did talk about it in our miniseries last season, we never got there.
Yeah.
I don't know why we did that. Why is that?
I personally, I don't know. The amount of times that in any given conversation, we just interrupt it with, I'm going to steal the Declaration of Independence, like, alone should have made us think, like, we have to do this episode, like, sooner rather than later. And we just, took 3 seasons to get to it.
It's shocking. It's surprising. I guess we can't cover everything all at once, which is also, I love that movie, by the way, Everything Everywhere All at Once. But
great movie.
Yes, let's go back. Let's dial back to 2004. But we're not going to place you in the soup. We're going to focus more on the topic because we're already a few minutes in. You know, I'm sure there are people sitting there going, "Get to the goddamn content."
We just want our sweet Nicolas Cage action. Damn it!
Yeah, get to the movie, okay? So we're getting to the movie now. Here's where I want to start with this one. And if you're reading the notes, Joe, which I think you are.
I always read the notes. You can never say that I never studied.
Yeah. Well, that's something I wanted to mention about this movie when it comes to studies, because director John Turteltaub, okay, him and Nicolas Cage actually went to school together. They went to high school together. And so it's interesting that they would loop back in here, because that was something I didn't actually know the first, several years that I watched this. And oddly enough, Nicolas Cage and John were up for like the same part in a play. And John actually beat Nicolas to the role.
Hard to believe. Hard to believe. Who is this John Turteltaub and his acting chops to one Nick Cage? No.
I mean, if acting chops is what his accreditation was, the movies that he ended up making, I wouldn't say are known for their acting ability, but he is known for Three Ninjas.
Yeah. I mean, it was not Ninja Turtles for the 90s, but there were ninjas involved.
Yeah, underage ninjas. Yeah. He also went on to do Cool Runnings, which a little bit better.
Yep. That was a little better. Like you at least had A-list actor at some point in time with John Candy in that one.
Yeah.
So and everyone has the Cool Runnings chant memorized if you grew up in the 90s. There's you can't tell me that you don't know it. Even if you think you don't know it, think for 5 seconds. It will come back.
Cool Runnings was that movie that I feel like everybody talked about, and I think everybody pretended they had seen it, even if they hadn't, just because it was so different. Because they're like, oh yeah, Jamaicans, huh? It's the 90s. What are Jamaicans again? Where are Jamaicans from? And we were all
very bad with geography.
Oh, awful. God awful here. Yeah, got to make a joke. Got to make that joke. But he would reunite with Nicolas Cage in The Sorcerer's Apprentice, if you remember that one. Which, you know what? That's another one of those movies that, kind of like National Treasure, I feel like it got ratings bombed. And yes, it's a Disney movie. It's meant for younger audiences. But still, they're journeys, man. These aren't stories.
They are.
Yeah. These aren't stories. These are journeys, man.
Oh. I feel like that's every Nicolas Cage movie. Every single one's a journey in and of itself.
Yeah. Except for Faster. Jesus.
Faster, not great. Or that fucking, what was it? Was it Jiu-Jitsu? Or what was that terrible? That's the one Nicolas Cage movie I think we both regret watching.
I can't watch Jiu-Jitsu. For those of you who haven't seen that movie, don't go see it unless you want to fall asleep, in which case watch it.
Yep.
Good God, I almost passed out watching that movie, Joe.
Mark was just sitting there, and then suddenly it was just game match set over right there.
One of the worst Nick Cage one-liners I have ever heard. It's game set match.
Because I think that was one of those moments where Nick Cage specifically had written his contract, I do each scene once. And he made that mistake. We can't have him do it again. He says he's only doing it once, so we'll just keep going. I mean, do we keep it in the movie?
Yeah.
Well, we kind of have to. If we cut it off before then, we don't know what it's going to look like. So let's just hope no one notices.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu.
Ugh. So that's what's nice about this movie is that it's a Nick Cage film, but he's surrounded by a lot of good people in this movie. And at the point in time that this came out, Diane Kruger was in a decent amount of movies. I remember how people first saw her in either this movie or in Inglourious Bastards, right? Yep. And Diane Kruger was really popular around this point in time, but they also managed to pull Harvey Keitel, John Voight, and Sean Bean into this.
Yeah, and John Voight, I imagine they grabbed him as he was just driving around in his Chrysler LeBaron, Woody convertible through New York City. Lucky they didn't get bit the way they just grabbed him like that. But hey, John Voight was in a forgiving mood that day.
Yeah, if you haven't heard it, John Voight bites people, so be careful. Yeah. Oh, and also in the entry or the beginning of this movie, you see a callback to when Nick Cage's character was a kid. Or otherwise known as a flashback, if I could remember my goddamn words. And features the late Christopher Plummer. Legendary Hollywood icon Christopher Plummer was in this. But I will not leave out Justin Bartha, who, if you remember, the man in The Hangover who gets stuck on the roof. he was very well placed in this as the Poindexter man in the chair, the part he was meant to play, baby.
Oh, completely. Like he has that like pretty solid like younger brother vibe going for him through this entire thing, where he really wants to be really good, but the older brother just consistently outshines him. So I had zero relationship to this character throughout the movie. Nothing in my life would have prompted me to feel like that. But like, he does a great job with this character in the fact that, unlike a lot of like modern movies where like you clearly have like a character who's in there as some sort of comic relief, it feels like everything is a joke for the sake of being a joke. Yeah. All of his jokes are very well timed and tied into what's going on, and they do make it a point that not everything that comes out of his mouth is a joke.
Correct.
So very well done.
Yeah, it's not like me when people watch me walking along. They're like, "It's funny because he's fat." It's not quite like that. He is very well used, not overused, and the balance between him, Cage, and Kruger is also fantastic throughout this movie.
Yeah.
And I know it's a quote unquote kids movie. It's like just because Disney made it doesn't mean that it's a kids movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there is one actor hiding in plain sight that I want to bring up. And if you've ever heard "Surprise, motherfucker," it's Eric King. He plays one of like the FBI agents in this movie from Dexter fame, and I can't help but say that every time I see him because he shows up in a couple sequences, and I just hope he said that on set somewhere. I don't think he had said the line yet on the show, but yeah,
probably not. But I mean, other than that, we do get a few other like things. At least like I noticed when it comes, like looking back at the movie, like when you first saw it in 2004, like there probably wasn't a connection. But like you had the actor who played Lucifer in Supernatural is in this movie, working for the FBI. Yeah. And his name is slipping me terribly right now.
Mark Pellegrino.
Mark Pellegrino, thank you very much. Yep. We also had our Spetsnaz Russian from Predators was in this movie as one of the henchmen. So,
yes. Mm-hmm. I do not know his name. I only know Mark Pellegrino because all of Marks are required to know each other's names. So that one's covered. But Joe, I do want to do a throwback of our own. Maybe a flashback to folks that remember who have listened to us since episode 1. We used to talk about inflation. Yes, math. And we're absolutely going to do some more goddamn math today. So, Joe, I don't know how familiar you are with the value of the American dollar in 2004 versus 2023.
Ooh.
But, do you want to try? Do you want to see how close you can get?
Yes, I would like to wager a guess.
All right, here's what we're going to do. I'll tell you what the values are from budget versus box office earnings, and you tell me what you think it's going to be in 2023.
Sweet deal. Okay.
All right. So the budget for this film was $100 million. A nice little, clean
little ditty.
Number.
Yeah. Yep. Nice even number.
Yeah. And the box office number was $347 million. Or
good for them.
347,500,000. Okay. So 347,500,000. What do you think those two numbers equate to in 2023 numbers?
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and say that the budget of 100 million in today monies is going to be $243 million.
Okay. And your second guess as far as the 347,500,000 number?
If I have to try and get my maths properly done, which I will be terribly off, that's going to put us at about 715 million.
All right. Well, Joe, I'm sorry, but you did not win today's contest.
So bad at math. Okay, what do we got?
However, you were corrected. It was a lot more than what the original number was. So 100 million is worth $159,258,867.13.
Okay, things not as bad as I thought. Okay, that's good.
Yeah,
but bad for me.
Yeah, yes, bad for your guess. The 347,500,000 is now worth 552,628,268.93.
Nice.
So a couple hundred million short of the Deadpool level that we usually use as that benchmark.
As the staple? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 750 million. That's usually pretty good. But
it's not bad for not having Ryan Reynolds in it.
I was going to say $500,000 in today's monies. Yeah. I wouldn't say that's too bad. I would say it's pretty good performance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's a win.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like if we use the rule of you need to make back twice what you spent, or I mean, they're doing pretty good. So
actually, and it's a movie that I think Sean Bean would be happy to make again, because he did say he's done dying in movies. So
it's true.
He doesn't, like, spoiler, does not die in this movie. So
very true.
Very true. And still mad about his name, by the way, that he's Sean Bean and not like Sean Bon or Scene Bean. He's just picking and choosing how he wants the English language to work, and I think that's trash.
Bending it to his will. Yeah.
He is. Mm-hmm.
And that's something I found interesting, Joe, about this movie. It's a Disney film.
Yeah.
They are still killing people, just not Sean Bean.
It's true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you can't have a ridiculous, like, size treasure of this magnitude and not have folks die. And, like, no one's buying that G.I. Joe war that no one dies in stuff anymore. So you got to have some people go down here and there over something this big.
Yes. Which in this film is one of the many Jerry Bruckheimer, produced films out there, and it's one of 6 collaborations with Nicolas Cage. Ooh. So for me, Joe, I know what I'm getting when I turn on a Jerry Bruckheimer film.
Oh, yeah.
But what do you typically think when you see that long winding road with the tree that gets struck by lightning? What do you typically think once that begins?
Well, it gets me excited. Not gonna lie, Mark. You see that happen, you just know you're in for a good time. If you're someone who is a millennial, such as ourselves, it's just a generation of films and filmmaking style that we grew up with and came to enjoy. It's very much how Porsches used to be made. We'd go into a Porsche dealership and say, "I'd like a Porsche," and they just ask what color you wanted, and you'd say red, and boom, you'd have a Porsche, because it was basically all the same car. You could call it different things. It was the same car over and over again. And this is basically a very similar movie over and over again. However, it is fun every single time. As long as you allow yourself to have fun with it. Like, obviously, these are not winning, like, Best Picture awards. You will not come away, like, having learned something new from it. You will, however, be entertained. And that's big point of a movie.
I was going to say, there's no way that you could watch his movies I would say if you've ever heard of Con Air, The Rock, Pirates of the Caribbean, I mean, you know what you're going to get, which is a lot of action that's not very believable and dialogue that's just as questionable.
Yep.
But you still keep coming back.
But my God, the fun. Which, on that note, like, can we name all 6 Bruckheimer Cage collaborations, by the way?
I already spotted you 2 of them.
You did. You gave us Con Air.
And this is 3. And like, this movie, National Treasure, is 3.
There's 3.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, go ahead and see if you can figure out the other 3.
So wait, hold on, because my memory is terrible. It was obviously National Treasure, and then we said Con Air, and then what was the other one you mentioned?
The Rock.
The Rock. Okay, just wanted to make sure, because that's where I was going to start things off, was with The Rock. So that obviously is there. Okay, so then we're going to have Gone in 60 Seconds as a staple. I mean, hate to be kind of that guy, but National Treasure 2?
Well, I mean,
it's included in that?
We're talking all the films they collaborated on. So that, I mean, you have to go there.
That's there. Some say it's cheap. Like, obviously, the sequel's going to be there. What's the next one?
No, Joe, I don't want you to feel stupid here.
I'm going to feel really dumb either way.
Well, we actually already mentioned the 6th movie earlier on, which was The Sorcerer's Apprentice.
The Sorcerer's. Okay. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So they've gone to that well several times. Some can question whether or not they should keep going back.
I mean, I'll keep watching. Admittedly, haven't seen The Sorcerer's Apprentice. It's the only one out of which is also why I wouldn't have guessed it was there. I don't know why I didn't think that one was a Bruckheimer film. Obviously, Renfield coming up, not Bruckheimer, just Nicolas Cage.
Yep.
Going to see it. But yeah. I'm okay with this collaboration coming back anytime.
So, Joe, this Bruckheimer age, though, I feel like it's also cresting on the golden age of Cage, which was mid to late 90s into the early 2000s. But in particular, this is that part of Cage history where we start getting the most questionable hair pieces he's ever worn.
Like knowing that, I think that was its worst. That was peak. Like he needs to just accept who he is and where his hair is in his life.
Yes.
Maybe a dick coming from a person such as myself. I am, so far, very well gifted in the follicle department. But, God, Nick, you had to know that was bad. Of all the things of knowing that you had to know, the hair had to be, peak badness. Although, Con Air, that long hair, balding look, rough.
Yeah, but it's the difference between his accent and his hair that kind of takes over in that movie.
That's true. Yep.
You're questioning both at different times, so there's balance. That's responsible. Okay, it's being responsible. Yes. Mm-hmm. But even his hair is a secondary piece of this film, because what we end up getting is this this history swashbuckling story where we're looking at the past coming to the future. And this is where I actually got really attached to this, because, my family, we're all kind of history buffs about different things. And this idea that the founding fathers, left behind all these clues to discover the grand lost Templar treasure, I think is still pretty compelling, even 20 years later, right?
Oh, absolutely. The only thing that I found very confusing as someone who grew up with, the adventuring, swashbuckling, treasure hunting movies and video games of the era is that there were, in fact, 0 Nazis in this movie.
Oh, yes.
Because they pretty much are always involved in every one of these types of stories. So, kudos to Bruckheimer for not going the Nazi trope direction and just letting us enjoy the fun treasure hunt race against the British, our other tried and true enemy in the film genre. If it's not Nazis, it will be the Brits. We can't really get past those two wars as Americans.
Well, you got a good point there. At the same time, Disney usually doesn't tackle the Nazis in their films.
They don't.
Which I think is a good decision when you're making family films. I think it's just a good job, Disney, for not doing that. but what is interesting, we talk about family here, in a lot of these movies where you have
we talking about family.
Oh God,
it's coming back, Mark. I don't know how you cannot get excited that in just a very short month here, we're getting Fast X. I'm sorry. It's family. Just sorry. Okay.
Hey,
rant over.
You don't need the early 2000s when you got family.
Is that tired yet? Are we tired of my Filipino version of Vin Diesel doing that?
I don't think so. I am. If you could just have other Filipino offshoots of other various Hollywood actors, I think we could make a series just on that.
Or we could just a book reading or audio books, right? Oh man!
Oh my God!
Well, to your point though, talking about family here for a second, the Gates family that Nicolas Cage's character Benjamin Gates belongs to have long been dismissed as conspiracy theorists, right? And when I look at some of these films, there's another popular kind of globe-trotting, swashbuckling film that comes up for me, which is Independence Day, where
yes.
You have this family that's kind of been disavowed by literally everybody because no one believes the theories and all that kind of stuff. But what I thought was a really important distinction for this movie is that the Gates family, yes, they're saying some things that you may not believe, but at no point did I ever think these people are crazy.
No.
I get the setup. I get they're the people don't believe it. But that's what always kind of carried through for me, is that they don't seem nuts. They seem like they actually know their shit. And I don't know. What do you think?
They're a group of cockeyed optimists, I would say, probably. But no, like, at no point are any of them coming off as, like, crazy. You definitely get that impression from, like, other people in the movie. Obviously, when you first get Nicolas Cage's character and Diane Kruger's character meeting each other for the third time in the movie, when she figures out who he really is, immediately she's like, "Oh no, you're that group of conspiracy theorists who've had these crazy ideas over the years." But other than that, like, you get glimpses. Maybe I should take a step back here, because there are glimpses of it, I have to say, and I really only get it once, and it's probably the scene on the Charlotte where they get the iron pen like hint and clue.
Yeah.
And like there's of course like the one henchman is like, "Oh, it's a prison because it's an iron pen," and then Nicolas Cage goes off on like literally like 4 different twists and turns over what it could actually mean before he finally gets to the Declaration of Independence. And it's a series of some pretty big logical leaps.
Yeah.
He just turns out to be right.
Well, but at the same time, you think of that, I look at it too as almost like Sherlock Holmes in like trying to sort the mind palace out. Like he's clearly not a genius, but he knows his history, and so you kind of see him go through that Rolodex in that moment that you mentioned. Yeah. And then he's like, no, that's stupid.
Yeah.
But what wasn't stupid was cutting his whole fucking hand open just to bleed on the damn pipe so that they could figure out what the clue was that was hidden on it. Couldn't you just read it, Ben?
Maybe, but I mean, can you really have a proper, like, clandestine, like, treasure hunt without having to read something in blood? I don't think you can do it. I think it was needed. It was in the heat of the moment, and it worked.
Yeah, but sanitize that thing. It's probably made with illegal whale bone. You got to take care of that.
I mean, Mark, this is also a different time and place. This is a time where we would go to bowling alleys for birthday parties, and we would be like going into like the 5 different bowling balls to find the one that was just right for us, and then we would go into greasy bowling hall pizza, did not wash our hands from bowling to pizza eating, just zero fear of anything like microbial. It's basically like Civil War era, like doctor, like stuff. Where it's like, no, the small stuff doesn't exist. This is pizza. Bowling is fun. This is a treasure. I need to bleed. Like, I think that's just where we're going with this.
I mean, if you're not risking sepsis, what are you doing with your life? You know?
Yeah.
I get it.
Not trying hard enough.
I like how you returned to the world of 2004 for a second, though, because that is something I wanted to mention to you as we're kind of navigating this movie. I want people to think about this because the reviews for this movie, and we're not just talking back then, even as the years went on, people were hard as shit on this film. Okay? And I'm just going to read through some of these really quick, Joe. You tell me what you think.
Okay.
The first one that I'm going to read is actually from 2018, so it's a little more recent. But they said, it is, for all its moments, a quintessential Brockheimer project. A big movie that, at its core, is just too small.
Yeah, they hate fun. That's what that person is. Like, yeah, they had fun once, and they hated it. Never doing it again. Okay, next one. What do we got?
Well, before we move on, the reason why I want to discredit this one specifically is because this movie actually has some pretty impressive set pieces, and I know that's not just what they mean by big, but they literally rebuilt Independence Hall just so that Nicolas Cage could run on the rooftop because they wouldn't let him do that at the real one.
That makes sense. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, so the thought process was there. I think big in terms of Hollywood was achieved, but maybe not like Inception level of thinking required to watch.
Well, I mean, God, like, does every movie have to be Inception level big? Because if you do, I think you can get tired of going to movies right quick.
I agree with that.
You need something that is just fun every once in a while. Like, I'm not gonna like put down, like, again, like, Oscar time movies when they come out. And sometimes it is really nice to have something that makes you rethink the way you've been looking at life every once in a while. I think it's very important and good for art to do that. Just as important, though, as art being able to make you just not think at all and being able to enjoy everything around you. And
which brings us,
finding a treasure map on the back of the Declaration of Independence. Probably not there, but the thought of it, kind of cool.
I was going to say it brings us to the next review that's a little less recent. So this actually came from 2009.
Okay.
So though Turtletop's direction is inspired, everything else from acting to plot and dialogue falls flat.
Okay, I'm going to throw this out there. Movie came out in 2004. This guy or lady came back 5 years later just to rip on it. I don't know, maybe move on to just not hating things 5 years after they came out and just talk about the things you like. But have to say, disagree with that completely. You're going to get some usual Nick Cage things. I talked about how him thinking and going from Iron Pen to Declaration of Independence did seem a bit of a jump. And not gonna lie, a lot of that is because it was Nicolas Cage who did it. Had it been another character, probably wouldn't have been as far out there. But
true,
it's Cage. It's Cage. It's what you're getting. But after that, no, I don't think so at all. You get a few scenes that are obviously kind of quippy humor. Like when they actually get their hands on the Declaration of Independence and Diane Kruger finds out that it is in fact the Declaration, and she will not stop trying to go for it, grab it. Nick Cage is going back and forth, kind of belittling her a little bit, not belittling her, but treating her like she's a child when clearly this is a very successful woman. You get small moments and that, but even then, even within those moments are still fun. When Nicolas Cage is talking to her, it seems to naturally flow. It doesn't seem forced. Doesn't seem fake. It seems like two people arguing, and I thought that was fine.
There's a specific reason for that. Now, when they were preparing for the film and shooting, in between takes, obviously not in between direct takes, but I mean the days in between, Diane Kruger and Nicolas Cage actually bonded over karaoke.
Okay.
So they would go out in the town and sing at night after after they were done. And some people have said it's noticeable that these two have sung together, sharing the stage and a mic, maybe a few drinks.
Yeah, see, I really thought you were going to say that to prepare for the role, what they'd actually done was actually develop a romantic relationship with each other, get upset on several occasions, and fought, took notes on it, broke up, then made the movie.
I mean, that's just good method. I'm not gonna. Yeah,
it's good thespianism.
which is what makes this last review so sad, Joe. This last review actually came from 2005. Okay, so
1 year after the fact.
Yeah, 1 year after. It says has almost nothing to recommend it. Justin Bartha's performance being the lone high point. Not even any gnarly explosions, which doesn't bode well for our man Brockheimer.
Not even any gnarly explosions? This feels like someone who walked into the movie wanting to hate it, and wanting to hate it for the sole reason of why people make fun of Michael Bay. Clearly it's all explosions, fast-moving scenes, then a camera's going to swoop over with a helicopter, and we're going to make fun of all the wide shots that he's doing. This guy sounds like he walked into the movie wanting to hate it because of seeing Gone in 60 Seconds, Con Air, and all the other Bruckheimer films that came before it. And then when it didn't do a lot of those things, they didn't know what to think, and they didn't know what to do about it, so they just decided to keep their anger and write about it.
I think that some people should just be named Optimus Wine, because that's what this guy really is doing here. I mean, when I think about this movie, and once again, we don't like to give the entire film away, but we do like to give some tidbits just in case those who are listening are rediscovering some of these properties, right? Because it has been some time. But I do think that for this film, that if you go into it with even a basic knowledge of some of the real events that happened in the founding of the United States and some of the lore that they're building on, you know, there are some compelling mysteries that live throughout history that we covered last year, right? Which is what happened to the Templars' vast treasures that they've been rumored to have all these hundreds of thousands of years, right? I say hundreds and thousands as separate things, not
hundreds of thousands. They've not been along. Have not been along that much.
No. But like that's one of those long-lasting mysteries. And I mean, the Curse of Oak Island is like hopped up on that stuff. You know, there are a lot of things across history that actually do point to, you know, the Templars having underground tunnels and, you know, secret ships that traveled that we can't track back down. So at least in theory, that's why even as a teenager, you know, young adult watching this, that's what kind of pulled me in. And I thought that really worked, even if it wasn't 100% factual. But what's your take on at least the nonfiction that inspired the fiction?
Well, I mean, so for the same reason that like people will love conspiracy theories and that they can take the slightest hint that something may not be as it seems and just completely run with it. What I don't understand is how people like that can't enjoy things like this, because your conspiracy theory probably really far-fetched and nonsense, and when you say it, not as entertaining, it just makes you sound crazy. And by the way, let's forget about flat Earth. Hot dog Earth is in. We're going that direction now. This is someone who takes those ideas and runs a mile with it in a way that is entertaining. So this is one where I think it works brilliantly for this. Is you have just enough like snippets of history of real life things that will like kind of bring people in and get them interested, and they expand on it in a fun way to keep you there. Now, we could say that, is there any responsibility to Jerry Bruckheimer and the other filmmakers to say this is indeed a work of fiction any more than you think they would have to? I'm going to say no. Like that should probably be on like someone saying, oh, it's a movie with Nicolas Cage. Probably not entirely true. I should be able to figure out where the line is myself.
I think there's a lot of merit to what you just said, especially because for me, it was the idea that the Freemasons were embedded in the early United States government. George Washington was popularly one of them, right? Ben Franklin was also one of them. Paul Revere, you know, like all of these names that most of us who took U.S. history and remembered a few words of it, that like, that's not fake. Like that stuff's actually true. So I thought as any historical fiction is kind of built, right? Like you've got to take things that are factual, even if you have to spread it, you know, just a little bit, right? But I thought that worked. I thought it worked throughout this film. Now, all of the clues, like you mentioned, taking the leap from a ship that, as far as history knows, we covered this. The Charlotte may or may not have been like 4 different ships at this point in time, and we don't know what happened to it. So why on earth would that one boat have, you know, the game-breaking clue on it? But either way, you know, that's why it's fiction. That's why it's fun. And the only thing I will say that this film popularly skinned its knee on was that the Declaration wasn't actually signed on July 4th, 1776.
No.
This was, for just simplified purposes here, it was the rough draft. And the actual signed document occurred on August 2nd, 1776.
Yes, but our founding fathers had the foresight of knowing that July 4th has a much better ring to it when celebrating the country's birthday, that we're going to popularize that date instead. No.
Yes.
But it was hot as balls on July 4th. So I can probably understand why that, like, after they did the rough draft, like, you know, let's take a break for a while. Come back after a bit and finish this up later.
Yeah, can we move this back to August or even September? I'd prefer September.
That's what I'm assuming our founding fathers sounded like, by the way. I have no idea.
Just old and crotchety.
Well, I mean, that's how Abraham Lincoln apparently sounded, you know, like an old prospector. So why not? But yeah, as we continue this topic of what works and what doesn't, Joe, is Nicolas Cage the right fit for this movie?
I mean, I'd like him here because, like, I've very rarely found Nick Cage out of place or in a movie where I did not care for him to be in. Like, obviously, Jiu-Jitsu is not great. Pig.
Oh, Pig's
very
great.
odd. Like,
good movie though. Fantastic movie.
But, like, I'm trying to think, like, at the time, in the 90s, over who you're going to have in this movie, other than Nick Cage. And I could think, like, Brendan Fraser. But Brendan Fraser, I think this is too close to The Mummy, where people are going to think he's just do the same thing over and over again. You could throw Tom Cruise in there, but if you put Tom Cruise in for here instead of Nick Cage, you're going to get a very different movie. And I don't know if it's going to work with Tom Cruise. Those are the two big ones that come to mind for this era of who you would have step in here. Because at this point, this is still Harrison Ford. We're going to be like, no, I'm not doing that. I did Indiana Jones. That's my thing. I'm not stepping into this. So, I mean, granted, there are plenty of other actors out there because I only named 3. But we're thinking like Jerry Bruckheimer, though, and who he's going to have come in here.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think Nick Cage is like the perfect age range because maybe if you go like, Rock co-star and you bring in Sean Connery, too old and, again, attached to the Indiana Jones franchise where it's just probably not going to work very well. John Travolta, absolutely not. This would just go all sorts of wrong with John Travolta at the helm.
We can steal the Declaration of Independence.
You're probably not as good. The same thing. I'm like going, who do I go through in this Hollywood Rolodex at this point in time? I don't see like a Val Kilmer stepping in or even like a Liam Neeson, because at that point Liam Neeson wasn't doing movies indiscriminately yet, So the only person I thought that might have been a good fit, but not from this era, would have been Chris Pine.
Yeah.
As he was, once he's a little bit older, like mid 30s or so, I think he could have been a great fit for this, and maybe had a better hairline.
Which, I mean, that's not a fair fight, as most people would probably have a better hairline.
Well, so hairline jokes aside, 'cause clearly under the hat that I wear, there's nothing. But when it comes to his performance in Gone in 60 Seconds, literally 3 years from a production standpoint, right? Like probably 3 years in between. That is a completely different performance than this one. And I don't just mean because of the subject matter. I just mean because there are lines that he says in Gone in 60 Seconds, like when he talks about blasting down the beach, you're just like, they probably should have taken another shot at that line.
Yep.
And in this movie, he does feel like he's taking the role a little bit more serious. And who knows, that could be because of people like Jon Voight. That could be because, like we talked about, Diane Kruger helping him kind of rise to the occasion. Because yes, Nick Cage has won an Academy Award, but that happened a really long time ago.
And Nick Cage decided he wasn't going to do that again, and he was going to try and take his career in different directions.
Yeah. I don't want to be typecast, okay? So I do think he did a better job with this movie than a lot of people tend to give him credit for.
Yeah.
And that's just because I am comparing Nicolas Cage's work and using his previous stuff to kind of gauge how this was. And I really do think he, from a Nicolas Cage standpoint, I think he put effort into this one. I think he actually did put time into this one.
I do too. And if you look at any performance that an actor could have had that may have had them cop an attitude enough to feel like they deserve to buy an island of their own, this is probably one of those movies. And that people who win like Academy Awards probably would never want to buy an island because they would see that as something that just isn't necessary and it's a bit too much. But when you do this movie, when you do National Treasure, and it is, just wall-to-wall fun, the whole thing, and not wall-to-wall action or fast-paced fun, but it's fun, like every single thing, because it either has you thinking about connecting clues, or there is a bit of an action, there's an element of romance, and there's comedy. It's kind of got a little bit of everything at very well-timed portions of it. And because of that well-timed performance and everything, and you do great at it, yeah, you kind of think you deserve an island after it.
I think what it did for me was establish this like heist mentality that a lot of movies try to adapt afterward, because you have this very specific soundtrack that kind of carries you throughout the entire film. It's got this like mysterious element to it, but I've heard this music copied in the Night of the Museums series. Like it's a very similar type of sound. You see it appear in some of like the Ocean's movies and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like this movie was, you know, the peak of copying cinematography and music for early 2000s. And as we watched other similar films later on, it starts to feel like you're watching the same thing. Yeah. And that's why I think this movie still stands up almost 20 years later. I just do.
I mean, solely for the fact that, again, like you said, there's so much of our modern cinema that relies on doing very similar things to what this movie did. And we continue to use very similar soundtrack. A lot of action movies will use a lot of the same Bruckheimer, like, known for things. You could even argue that, like, again, like the Michael Bay stuff, like the stuff that he gets is very Bruckheimer-ish. So, yeah, a lot of our modern action and modern swashbuckling events really have to pay tribute to this movie.
Yeah, and I think as a film, I think it does do a very good job of mixing and balancing multi-generational actors here. A lot of people know who Harvey Keitel is. I'm a big fan of him from one very specific movie called Reservoir Dogs, but there's plenty more, of course. But I think that was one of the things that truly helps legitimize this movie beyond just being what some people would say that's a Disney movie and it's a kid's film, right?
Yeah.
Now, Keitel's not going to be recognized by the Academy for his work in this film, but he does what he needs to do. And that's what I think, like you've kind of mentioned a few times, that this movie should be known for, is that despite some of the people on Rotten Tomatoes or any of these aggregate sites, I think they're being way too hard on a film that wasn't meant to be Academy consideration.
Yeah.
You know,
and I mean, Harvey's delivery of, there are two options here. Either you go to jail for a very long time, or you help us find the Declaration of Independence, and you still go to jail for a very long time, but you feel better about it. Like, winning that, like that's a win all by itself.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And his salute. Hello, Mr. Gates. You know, he does a good job with that. And I really do appreciate how this movie builds and how it doesn't really, I don't think it ever really gets to that point where it gets out of control. You know, like we never have that moment like in the Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, where Legolas is grabbing the opposite side of a horse and somehow flipping himself to the other side. You know, you're not getting anything that's too ridiculous from that standpoint.
Yeah, and even like the grand reveal of the treasure, like, and the lead up to the grand reveal, where they could have gone like Legolas grandiose ridiculous, they decided against that. Like that whole like traversing part seems believable. Yeah,
that's why I think some of these people are just way too hard on a movie that's meant to be a way for you to ingest as much popcorn as possible.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And that's why we're celebrating it, because damn it, that's what we do on this show. And that's why we're happy that you were back to join us, everybody. Thank you so much for following us. If you haven't, check us out on our social media. We're always doing something crazy over there, but it is great to be back with you for season 3 of this show. And obviously, thank you for listening to Digital Dissection. We here appreciate everything that you're doing, joining us in this pop culture journey. We hope you learned something new, or at the very least, rediscovered something from the recent past. And as always, you can join the conversation, drop us a follow, a review for the show, and keep in touch with our latest content every week. You are always welcome to message us at digitaldissectionpodcast@gmail.com. We welcome your ideas for future shows and, well, anything you'd like to discuss, so long as it's tastefully done. And until next time, keep on dissecting.